Okay, so this particular lesson is going to be about controlling one's thoughts, especially when one is feeling suicidal, when someone is feeling depressed, when they're having thoughts that are self-defeating. And it is important for a person to understand their own self-worth in order for them to be able to really bring themselves out of self-defeating thoughts or things that could be very harmful to them or even to others. Now, number one, it's important to consider that when you are experiencing negative thoughts, suicidal thoughts, or tendencies that are going to be detrimental to you and other people around you, as well as your behaviors and how they could affect other people and your family, you have to look and ask yourself, number one, is this particular thing that's happening in my life, is it so crucial that when I wake up next week or a month from now or a year from now, okay, whether these things will still be a thing within my system that is destroying me? Because if you understand that everything is actually temporary, then you can help yourself move beyond self-defeating thoughts. So it's important to understand that right off the bat that everything is a temporary situation. There is nothing so crucial going on within your life or even within the lives of others that it cannot be changed in a constructive manner. A lot of people immediately are controlled by their emotions, and if we remember what emotions are, your emotions are a signal from the environment, a signal which informs you that the situation that you're in or an action that was taken was one that would either have been negative, positive, deconstructive, or constructive. Okay, so emotions are your system's way of telling you the resonance of a particular situation, the vibration of that particular situation. Now, do we allow emotions to control ourselves? A good self-mastery practitioner is going to be able to look at that and say, okay, I'm going to look at this signal, I'm going to observe this signal, and then I'm going to determine whether this signal is actually informing me of something. But what you don't want to do is become immersed in the signal to the point where that signal is now controlling your thoughts or is controlling your actions. Suicide is nothing more, and understand that I'm talking about suicide in the negative format. Most people, when they commit suicide, it's because they're tired. They can no longer take what's going on in their lives. They're in extraordinary pain. But the thing is, how your mind goes out of this world. If you are immersed within a particular thought or a particular structure, and it is the determining factor of whether you're going to live or die on this planet, you got to understand that nothing changes once your transition from this point is made to the next point. So when you die, that's just going to follow you. You don't escape anything. There is no such thing as escape. This is going to be the sort of thing that no matter what, that resonance, that vibration, that feeling is going to simply alter its state just like you. It's going to transition from this point to the next point when you make that transition. So you have to understand that by taking yourself out of this particular planetary sphere, this particular vibratory signature of physicality, that you haven't changed anything within the soul. Now, I can say that there are constructive ways of taking oneself out of this world. It all depends upon your mental state at the time. If you are in a situation where you realize that, well, there's not much further you can go, your body now has completely corroded or caved in, and that there's nothing more that you can add to the life that you are living, then you say to yourself, okay, I've lived a good life. I've lived a positive, fun life. I've done the best I can for everyone around me, and this is where this will end. And so if you go out in a positive, loving manner, and you can't fake this, you can't fool the universe. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to listen to my words and go, oh, as long as I go out happy, then everything will be fine. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. You actually have, your vibratory signature actually has to register that. As a person who can see auras and whatnot, I can tell when a person is lying. And don't think that the universe can't tell either, because if I have this ability, that means the universal mind, the universal mainframe, that which you want to call God, sees it the same way. So there's not going to be any fooling this particular system. So what I want you to understand is that you cannot allow any signal to be the governing factor, or any emotion to be the governing factor of the next stages that you take within your life. You have to understand that there's far more to this process of living. There's far more to the process of contributing to your environment and to how the world perceives you than just your own emotions or your own perspective. A lot of people think that, because I hear this a lot in the New Age, especially the New Age systems out there, they want to boil everything down to being a subjective thing. So if it's a situation where you interpret it as such, then the only thing that matters is your interpretation. Well, that's not necessarily true, because since everything is connected and every action that you take actually affects the outer environment, not just the inner, but the outer. You got to remember that if we are one, and that if everything that occurs from the inside also reflects from the outside and vice versa, then the decisions that you make and the actions that you take are going to actually resonate as a wave outward from you. It's going to go out in a spiral, whack, just like that, and it's going to come back in. So understand that you will affect people by the actions that you make. Anytime that I operate with something, I understand that my actions of observation have an effect, a mass effect on the system out here. Just observation alone. Then, when I observe something and then take action as well along with that observation, then guess what? You've coupled that. You've taken two techniques, you've coupled it to create another outcome. So 1 + 1 = 2 in an environment like this. 2 + 2 = 4. It all ends up affecting one another. Everything affects one another. So thoughts, emotions, actions, signals, they're all interrelated. They're all correlated. Now, if you look and you realize, like I said before, that your fears, that your interpretations and everything else are actually affecting the outer environment, including the inner, then once you understand that, then you start to understand how you can really operate within certain emotions and certain actions in order to create new outcomes and new results. So for the person who constantly engages with a suicidal mind, understand that when you are punishing yourself to that degree, you are also punishing things on the outer environment from yourself. This is very true. One of the best ways to illustrate that is the idea, and I've used this kind of a metaphor before, but you can go into a room and you'll notice that a ton of people are sitting there, they're either angry or they're happy. We'll just choose happy. Then you watch another person that will walk in. They're angry, they're tense, and what will end up happening is, even without a word being spoken from that person, you'll notice that everyone else will start to become uncomfortable. The vibration of that situation will change. Sometimes people will reach out and go, "Hey, what's wrong?" Or they'll try to avoid you because your vibration is actually layering a stink on the entire situation. And so the thing is your ability to affect the mass is much greater than a lot of people want to imagine. This is the reason why, as self-mastery practitioners, we want to be mindful of the thoughts that we are putting out. We want to be mindful of the feelings that we have. Now, I'm not telling you to necessarily fight those feelings, but what I am trying to tell you to do is that if you look at those feelings, you have to break down the reason why they're occurring and then make the necessary changes to pull yourself out of a situation which is doing nothing but drowning you. I myself have suffered some losses recently, and I have also experienced some pretty heavy circumstances lately that have caused, and it could have changed the way that I behaved. It could have changed the way that I saw the world, but I started looking at things in a more positive manner and realizing that if I allow myself to become submerged in all of that, then I am willingly choosing that action. So, what is my response to these sort of things? Well, of course, number one, I want to change the way that I am experiencing the world. I want to change my viewpoint. As opposed to suffer from a viewpoint that has been presented, I can engage in the option to do something different. Now, recently my brother died. I could have seen that as a complete shock to my system. I could have looked at that and said, well, this was an attack. I could have looked at that and also allowed it to stop me from going to work. It could have been the very thing that stopped me from making videos that would help others. I could have sat and become depressed and allowed this whole situation to drag me under. Or I could look and see the signal for what it is and say to myself, there's more positive manners to deal with this. One of the things that I like to do when I am feeling low, or when a situation has come through that I feel that is trying to defeat my own resolve, one of the things that I like to do is, again, first, I begin to change my perception of the situation, change my outlook. This is not something that is forced, and it's not something that I do to just hide or avoid the situation itself. What I'm actually trying to do is change this situation for the long term so that I'm a benefactor for my environment as opposed to something that could be negative or detrimental. So I'm changing my outlook. Number two, in terms of the meditative process, I begin the process of breathing. Now, when it comes to something like suicidal thoughts, grieving, or anything that has a negative resonance, the first thing that I do is I try to get my system under control, because your physiology will affect your mind. If you are in a nervous state all the time, if you are in a situation where you are focused upon anger, it will constrict your blood flow. It will make your heart work faster. It'll cause your brain to really start focusing on all of the things that are negative, and then it will become one of those things where you zero in on it, and that is the only thing that you're focused upon anymore. You're no longer observing everything that is happening around you because you are focusing on one thing. You become very monolithic. So, what I immediately begin to do is I change my physiology, okay? So I start a process of breathing. In this case, it would be nice, easy, slow, shallow breaths. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm returning my mind to a tranquil state. Bringing myself to a nice, palatable, level state of mind and of existence. Now notice, I stopped the breathing. I kind of began to relax. Now, the system returns back to normal. While I was breathing, while I was moving my fingers, it started moving to the pace of my movements. The universe itself, the system, began breathing with me in and out, just like this. And it was pacing itself with my movements. Now, this should show you directly that by doing so, that the next thing that happens is the system itself calms itself, and then it starts moving with my own pace. This is an example to you that what occurs on the inside also is reflecting on the outside. Okay, so this wasn't a thing where this was moving before. Now, when I had first started some of the breathing, when I started some of the movements, it kicked up then. But it is important that you understand that when you are doing this stuff, that you are actually affecting the external properties all around you. This is why controlling our minds is so crucial. Now, once you get yourself nice and tranquil into that state, you start thinking about, and don't boost your ego, but what you want to do is you want to start thinking about all the positive things that have been in your life, all the people that would actually miss you if you were gone, all of the ways that you could help change things for the better, but that would never occur anymore because you have no chance of making those changes. You're no longer there to affect your environment. Without you there, you have no way of altering or changing things for the better any longer. You've X'd that out of the equation. So when you're engaging in suicidal thoughts, you have to ask yourself, what is the most important thing here? Am I overreacting? Is this a temporary situation, or is this something that will persist? If it does persist, then you need to find the proper support systems. There are people out there who love you. You have family that loves you. You have friends that love you. And if you are in a situation where your family has turned your back, there's always going to be someone out there, always, that is going to be able to relate with you and understand your situation or understand your problem. So, again, you look, you observe, and then you evaluate your situation, whether it is a permanent situation or whether it's temporary. And most things in this life are temporary. You have to think about whether or not that the situation itself, is it going to be something that follows you? Or is it going to be something that if you take the proper actions, will it change, and can you change it for the better? Think about your friends, think about your family. Then you start the process of breathing. Getting your body, your physiology back down to a nice, steady, stable pace. Then you start thinking about all of the positive effects that you can make upon this world around you. And then you have to realize that if you're giving up at this particular point, then you have no chance anymore, because suicidal is pretty much a permanent thing. Now, I said almost everything out there is temporary, but once you've taken your life, you've taken out any ability that you can do to affect your system or your environment or help others. Maybe there's others out there who are feeling some of the same thoughts as you. Maybe you can relate to them. Maybe you can help change the way they're thinking. Because again, I want to tell you that once the transition is made from this world to the next world, whatever resonance or vibration that you were in at that particular point, that's going to do nothing but follow you to the next spot. There's a movie out there that I highly recommend watching. It's called Cruel and Unusual. It's a great movie. Now, the end of the movie kind of, I don't know, it's a questionable ending, but that ending is there to actually demonstrate to you how this person was able to change a situation by a particular action. It also gives you kind of a look into, I don't know, the way life operates. Another show that I would like you to watch is called Black Mirror, specifically the White Christmas episode. That'll give you a new outlook on the way time operates and the way God could be perceived. So, nonetheless, what you're trying to do is you want to make sure that you are avoiding a signal being the determining factor of your actions. Always look at the signal. Always understand the properties of why the signal exists. Then, from that point, you logically put everything on the platform and say, what is the relevance of this in my life? Is the situation temporary, which more than likely it is? Again, is this something that you can change by changing your outlook and actions? Going back into the internal, meditating, getting yourself back to a normal state, and then realizing all the things that you could do on a positive level and the actions that you could take in order to affect and create a new outcome. Because remember, you are the creator of your reality. You truly are. There's a lot of people who believe that they are victims of circumstance, but 9 times out of 10, they were the creators of the circumstances that they were in. Most of the times we don't look at that. There were many times in my life where I thought that I was a victim until I really went back, studied how that situation came to be, and then I realized, oh yeah, I completely put myself in that situation, and I had every opportunity to take myself out of that situation. So, now, like I said before, shallow breaths, getting your body, your physiology down so that way you're not, your heart isn't going completely crazy, that you're not restricting oxygen and blood flow from your system, because that oftentimes will also create a ill effect upon your mood. The angrier that you get, the more red that you will see, and as I've said before, red is the lowest vibrating color within the visible spectrum. It is the very thing that basically causes any negative thing to occur. If you even look at how the system represents the color red, stop signs, okay? It's all control setups and scenarios. So think about it carefully. Now, another thing that I like to do, sometimes you're not in a situation where you can do that, but most of the time, if you're suicidal, that this is an ongoing thing. So what you want to do is allow yourself to lay down, to completely relax. Relax your mind, relax your body. By doing so, you're getting all of the kinks out of your system. I also suggest stretching too. But the more that you relax and the more that you allow your mind to completely go into outer space, as opposed to concentrating on the problem itself, allow your mind the rest. Sometimes just sleeping will help, but you don't want to sleep so much that that becomes a situation where you're basically putting yourself in a new phase of depression, because oversleeping will often cause that as well. Now, one of the most awesome things about sleeping is the fact that when you do sleep and you get a good night's rest, your system is creating the necessary repairs on your body. So that melatonin goes into your system and it begins to work and it begins to repair the repair process on your DNA. Very true. So the more you can get rest, the more you can concentrate and focus on constructive things, the easier it's going to be to take yourself out of a suicidal frame of thought. Another thing that you want to do is start to focus on something that you're really good at. If you're good at making music, do so. If you're good at drawing or art, remember, we're trying to take this into a creative, constructive situation as opposed to detrimental and deconstructive. So, allow your mind to get the necessary rest. Do not allow yourself to become controlled, and do not become absorbed in negativity. That is nothing more than a fear-based response. Fear is something that hides and masks itself in multiple different manners. By moving forward out of fear, you become proactive. Ask yourself what it is that you fear so much that has caused your mind to get into a state of depression, or to get yourself in a state where you can no longer handle the consequences or the actions of the world around you. Have you been defeated? Ask yourself this. And if you've been defeated, what was the game that you were playing that brought about your defeat? If so, all you need to do is change the rules of the game. Change how the game is perceived. Change the entire makeup of the game itself. If it's a game, then you are a player. If you are a player, then all you have to do is, again, redecide how the game is played and then create a new rule set. You know, this is how I figured out how to do a lot of the things that I do here. Not only did I get a lot of knowledge from the dream world, of course, I received training as well, okay? Certain types of training. I'm not going to go too much into that. But I looked at the rule set of this environment. Physics tells us that energy movement doesn't happen. It doesn't work. It's non-existent. But then all of a sudden, one day, I was recreating the rules and how they operate. And lo and behold, if one can actually recreate the rules, hack the environment, and create a new structure, then why does one have to be trapped in any sort of a particular mindset? Why does one have to be trapped in a signal that tells me, oh, I'm not getting what I want out of this life, so maybe I should just X myself out of the equation? Always remember, too, that no matter how bad things are for you, there is someone in this world who is still alive, who is still fighting for their own lives, who has it far worse than you. That they are still playing that game, that they are still within it, regardless of how life has attempted to beat them down. There's always someone worse off than you. And then you ask yourself, how is it that they're handling it? And again, like I said before, find the proper support structure. The internet is full of groups, full of people who basically interrelate with one another. They have conversations about their particular problems, and then they find ways to improve their lives. You only get a small amount of time in this particular planet. It may seem like a long time, and for me it feels as if I've lived a million lifetimes within this one. Do I want to rest? Absolutely. But I realize that I only get, at least that I know of while I'm in the here and now, I only get one time around in this. So if I only get one time around, then I have to make as much impact as possible. I do myself have something to live for. I have to teach and bring as much of this knowledge as possible so other people can evolve themselves and make the best lives for themselves that they can while here on this planet, on this earth, so they can also pass that knowledge along and help others in the process. There's many people who want to evolve from this system, but I can tell you this, suicide will only ensure that you are recycled and brought right back to it until you can figure out, until you can actually overcome that situation. So suicide is a surefire method of making sure that you come back here and do it all over again. If this is what you're going for, fine. You get a redo. And the universe is quite nice. It'll offer you as many redos as humanly possible. It'll just continue doing it. It'll recycle you over and over. The process, though, is to break that cycle and to move forward and do something positive. Then you get on to another stage after all this that is more beneficial, more positive. But if you allow yourself to get trapped in the weaknesses of this particular world, then what's going to end up happening is this world is, if you're not able to breach the limitations of this world, and you yourself succumb to those limitations, then you're going to be offered those same limitations again. Something for you to think about and understand. So I've given you a few techniques there. It is imperative that a person who is feeling as if this world has somehow defeated them, that they understand that there is no such thing as that, truly. It's only in your perception, and it's only in the way that you're looking at how this world presents that particular scenario or setup. You have every opportunity to do something different, to change the way you think, and to change the actions. A lot of people will approach a problem the same way every single time. Why? I'm not for sure, because if it didn't work the first time, it's probably not going to work the second time. You have to adapt to the structures of your own problems. And once you adapt to it, then you change it. You alter it. So these things are all up to you, and it's all choice-oriented. But those are a few techniques that will help you along. Michael Grubb, Eternal Love.